It's week 14, we're building HexBox. This video is not gonna be as exciting as the rest of the videos, so you've been warned, but we're gonna really dive into the details this week on what we've been building. One other exciting thing that I forgot to mention is I'd like to open source the Hex graph-based engine as soon as the MVP is ready and it actually does something useful. So we'll see if we get to that point, but keep watching. Welcome to week 17 of 2026. We're building the HexBox to take back tech. That's right, we're building transparent computing so that you can dive into the details of the computers that you're using anytime you want to, and you don't have to outsource it to the cloud. So let's get into what we did this week. Couple things. I'm trying to remind myself to keep the loop tight, the scope small, the system real. What is the loop? The feedback loop. I need to not get lost in the sauce, which I totally did this week. We'll talk about that. And the scope small, we need to be biting off tiny little chunks because the problem that we're trying to solve here is quite large. Keep the system real, keep something that we're actually running on the hardware. This week we won't have anything running on the actual hardware, unfortunately. Need one more week to rebuild everything, but we'll get there. A couple things. Hex 4, object-based, contract, item, provider. We saw this in all the previous demos. Blowing that away for now. The object-based approach was very messy. It wasn't clear how they all related to each other. It was trying to do dependency injection and eventually graphs and things like that, but wiping it away, we need to start from graph-based. We need DAGs at least, directed acyclic graphs, and that needs to be the basis of everything. People can look at a graph and intuitively understand it, so that's where we need to start. The next thing that I tried that we'll see is vibe coding a graph-based executor. That's Hex 5. So I'm starting new code bases every time I try something new here so that I don't have the clutter of the previous one. Vibe coded the spec for it, the requirements, had a big old long document, split it out into pieces, and then told it to execute each piece one by one. And it got pretty far, you'll see, but it got to the point where I couldn't edit it anymore. I had no idea how it worked, and I basically didn't own it anymore. And it was getting really expensive to tell the AI to do it for me. It would just cycle and cycle, and Gemini and all that stuff were just taking all my money. So we can't completely rely on AI. The good thing is it gave me a good idea of what I'm trying to build. So then I decided to try to recreate the UI from that in a simpler way. And I found myself going in circles because I was not keeping the loop tight, I was not keeping the scope small, I was not keeping the system real. Building the UI first when it doesn't actually execute anything is not useful. So that leads us to the DAG first approach. And I think the next video that I'll put is my description of that really tight DAG loop that was built in Python. And it's the simplest possible loop that we can have that is an actual executing graph. So I learned some things about graphs too this week, topographical sort, all that stuff. That's gonna be the core though. We're gonna start with that. We're gonna get YAML files that you can import using Hex and execute that graph. From there, we'll build out. We'll add functions that run when the node traverses. We'll add data nodes passing in and out, and then we can add the visualization at that point, and then we'll go from there. The DAG is the core of it all. So with that, let's jump into the DAG explanation. And then after that, you can see all of these little clips of me trying to build this along the way, sharing my thoughts as I go, as if I know what I'm doing. But really, I was just spinning my wheels a little bit. And yeah, you can see all those pieces. Okay, this is pretty fun actually. In less than 50 lines of code, we have a graph executor type thing. I just showed the topographical sort thing. I actually was able to delete that, and you can kind of see the bare logic on its own with no external library. So let's talk through it. First of all, nodes are super simple to start. They just have a name and a list of needs, and those needs are the names of other nodes that they need to have executed before they can run. And then we have a graph, which is just a list of nodes, that's it. And then we converted our payment flow to be a graph and nodes type thing. So we have validate and user with no needs, and then we have review, which needs validate and user, and then we have payment, which needs review. So these, if you execute them in order, look something like this. So they all run in order, which is perfect. Now, what if we run them out of order? What if we try to run review first? Well, it should be able to handle that. If we run it, we can see that it skips a few of them. It skips review because two of its needs are missing. Then it runs validate and user, skips payment because it needs review, and then it's going to do this while loop here. It's going to go do an entire additional pass across the graph, and then that time it can execute review because validate and user have run, and then it can execute payment because review ran. And that's it. So that's cool, but then upon further analysis, if you accidentally introduce a cycle, you could end up in an infinite loop, right? So we had to add cycle detection too. What would a cycle look like? It would be if review, we can leave that up there. It would be if review also depended on payment, right? So that's kind of a cycle. Review is going to be waiting for payment to complete. Payment's going to be waiting for review to complete. So if we run that, it used to infinitely loop, but I was able to detect the cycle. And how we do that is if you did something during the for loop, then that gets set to true, but by default it's false. So if we execute any nodes, we set that to true. If we get through this entire for loop without executing any nodes, we're in a cycle. So we break, and that's it. So less than 50 lines. I mean, the real code here is like 20 lines, right? So this is powerful, I think. And to me, the next steps are, now that we have these custom data structures, let's get this serialized into YAML files so that we don't have to edit the source code to run graphs. And then we can run graphs out of YAML. And then we can start attaching code to each of these so that they actually do something when you execute them. But I mean, the core dependencies piece and how things execute in order, I mean, it's all there. And in fact, we could probably go back and do some visualizations for this too. So it's pretty exciting. I guess just to walk through the excitement of running this directed acyclic graph real quick. So this outer loop, as we established, is for multiple passes over the list of nodes for ones that didn't execute due to waiting for a dependency. We talked about did something being a flag to indicate cycles. And then for each node, we check if the node name is in results. Notice this results dictionary. The node name just gets thrown in there if it's completed. In reality, this is going to be the outputs of that node as well. So we'll have to have a node results of some sort instead of just the name being stored. Then we have this has needs flag. So we're going to cycle through all of the needs. That's these right here. And if the need is not in the results, the completed nodes, then we're going to skip it and wait until later. And we're going to set has needs to false. We have to set has needs to false so that we can continue right here, because if you continue here, the continue keyword is operating on this for loop, and then you're just going to go ahead and execute that node, even though you're not supposed to. I don't know if that made sense, but if you make it this far, if you don't have needs that you're waiting on, and if you haven't already run, then you can go ahead and run it. It says executing node, and you're going to store your results. You're going to take your node name, and you're just going to put this result of node into the results dictionary, and then you're going to say that you did something. In other words, you executed at least one node in this for loop, and then we got down here, if we did not, that indicates a cycle, and then you can move on to the next pass of the graph. So that's probably good enough for 1 week right there. All right, what we've got here is the result of some serious vibe coding. We have this graph debugger. How did I launch this? I ran UV run hex UI, and it launched this guy, and it's intended to show how graphs work. So what we can do is we can hit run graph. I can say hi, hello as my input, trigger execution, and it says that it completed. So I clicked on the one that I just ran, and inputs, hi, hello is all over the place. Fetch, this node right here, the inputs are actually the graph state, which is not quite right. The outputs, again, it's the graph state. And then the graph state is, this should be the output, I believe, or something. It's not even right. The provider code is right here. So I think I'm feeling around in the dark here. I'm getting closer to what I need, but I think I've over-designed this thing, and I've lost control of it. I vibe coded so much of this that I wouldn't even know how to edit this at this point. So I have this whole executions suspension feature, which I didn't think I needed, but I guess the LLM did. And you can see the provider code here. You have the inputs, which is the graph state, of course. The outputs, it's very strange, the inputs here. Everything's all messed up, but this is the wrong time. These are the right times at least. But that's that. I also have a CLI that I can show, but I'm probably going to start over from scratch. So this was hex number 5, hex 6. Maybe that'll really be the one. It'll take a lot of the inspiration from here, but start from the very basics and work its way out, which is what I failed to do on this one. But it was a little exploratory. Can't hurt to explore. Here we are in the repo that made it all happen. If I do hex help, I have logs, resume, runs, status, and UI. If I go into the workspace here, the example workspace, I have executions, which we saw in the UI. I have modules. I have the demo module. Inside of that, there are 2 graphs that are defined in YAML, which we kind of saw visually represented. There are providers, which is very short snippets of code with inputs and outputs. There's views, which we didn't even get into yet. So there are a lot of features in this thing. And you can see that I went pretty hard with the vibe coding. As I mentioned, I have a feature guide, I have requirements, a spec. I have this implementation plan, which has a top level index, and it has 10 phases. I got to phase 5.5, which I added after the fact, and that's the little mini built-in UI. But I think I'm over my head. I think I need to start over. If you go back to HexBox, blog, vlog, whatever, devlog number 1, the title of that was Coding is Recoding. I learned a lot about what I'm trying to build, and now it's time to recode. All right, I've got a Hex 6 repo all spun up. It's completely blank, and I'm going to start out just by initializing the package, UV init. I get all the boilerplate files. I'm going to take one tiny step at a time. I'm going to have Hex 5 open here as reference. I'm going to move over what I like, but I'm going to start from the very top level and work my way down. By that I mean I'm going to start by spinning up a user interface so that I can see it how I like it and interact with it with fake data, and then I'm going to drill in from there and make it work in the engine, and then I'll repeat that process until I have all the features that I need. All right, I have dynamic versioning set up how I like it, and now if I run UV run hex, I get hello from hex 6, so main.py is all wired up. That's good. We have a init.py importing the dynamically generated version, and that's it. One tweak, I have to make this say dynamic equals version. Okay, now we're good. And the version is dynamic. Good. I'll add PyCache to my git ignore, and now we're good to go. All right, I'm stealing the version command from Hex 4, so a few versions ago, and it's using pure arg parse, so we don't have to worry about any dependencies being added, and it just runs this guy. And yeah, that's it. It gives a clean Hex version, and we're good to continue adding more subcommands. They are entirely self-contained, the way that it's being passed around, so that's always nice, and this should scale pretty well. Next, let's add a UI subcommand here. We'll just jump right into the fun stuff and see if we can restore that Hex 5 Vite app that launched. All right, let's conditionally import something from Hex UI, which also imports Fast API. And what's going to happen is if we don't have that UI package installed, we're going to fail because it can't find Fast API. And if we do have it, then we'll be good. So let's try Hex UI. And hopefully, yes, it failed with the import error. It caught it and it told you what to run. So we can run pip install hex UI, and we can try it again. And it looks like it worked, kinda. I just realized that this conflicts with the hex dump utility. Oops. I might just deal with it. There we go. Had to recreate the virtual environment, but there we go. UI coming soon. Okay, now we've got a very basic UI working. If we run hex run UI, we open it up and we have this version endpoint. And there's actually nothing at / yet. So let's go ahead and generate that Vite project so we can have an actual web app. There it is, generated the fresh Vite project. Static output is working and the API is also working. All right, we'll install React Flow, which is the core of everything, the graph UI. Okay, I cleared out all the boilerplate. It's just hello world now. Okay, and I whipped up a couple little basic things here. We import the CSS for React Flow, and we define some nodes. They have an ID, a position, data, and a type, blah, 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 and some edges as well. And then we just have this React Flow element. We have a background, we have controls, and that gives us this little window here. So let's see where we can go with this. I poked around with the input data, and now I have a pretty standard start, some node that does something, and end. As you can see, now I'm doing some LLMing on the side, but I'm pasting it in and examining it, so we're looking better here. Okay, so addicted to Gemini here. I described what I'm trying to do, and I threw it in here into Gemini and got out this big blob of code. I think it actually did a pretty good job. You have this start, hello, and end nodes. You have a run graph, and if you hit execute graph, you can see that it worked in quotes. It's all fake data. Of course, we go back to history. You can see all the other executions. Here's a fake one that did not work. And yeah, we can run it again and it actually spins up another one, adds it to the executions history. Now we have 4. So it's not pretty, but I think it will drive what we're trying to do, which is now how do we make this actually work for something real? How can we make this an echo node and actually run it in Python? So let's think about that. Okay, so we've got this canvas here and we have start nodes, end nodes, all this stuff. So we have the inputs flowing into a compute node type thing, and it flows out an output, and then that output gets plugged into something else. So eventually this could like plug in all sorts of places, but for now this is good enough, I think. Next step is we have 300 lines in this one file, so time to think about splitting this out into smaller pieces so that it makes logical sense and it's easier for people to understand what's going on. Okay, not the cleanest split, but it still runs, and I have graph canvas and control panel as separate components. Here's the canvas, it's pretty short, and here's the control panel. It's pretty long and props are all over the place, so this is probably going to need to be split up a little bit more. And of course we have all this state management stuff going on up here, and some nodes and edges and things that needs to be cleaned up too. So let's keep going. Okay, so I think we need some data types here that we've defined ourselves, some abstract models representing things. In my mind, we have two things here. We have data nodes, that's these guys, and we have process nodes, that's these two that actually process something. So, I mean, I think everything needs an ID, right? And data nodes have a name or a title, and they have a value, and then that gets computed or turned into something or another here. And then maybe it has a status, like it's red or green or whatever. And then down below, the process node has a title. Maybe I should also call this a title too. Title has a value, blah, blah, blah. And then this guy also has, let's see, code, I guess. We can start with that. All right, as a decent stopping point, the canvas contains all the logic for the colors, and the app TSX here is looking a little bit thinner. It just has some dummy data and state and the adding an execution thing, and that's it. So it's not quite working. Actually, that did work, but it's not where it needs to be, but it's getting better, and I'm actually starting to more deeply understand what's actually going on here. So we're moving past the vibe coding stage into the understanding and owning stage, which is great.
12 sleepless hours later.
Okay, after running in circles for a while, I have to stop, and we need to ground this in reality. This UI first approach was good for some exploration, but we got to get something running in Python, and then we can inject it into the UI and play with it from there. So let's, I'll pick up with that again soon.